snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.
Hi guys! So today I am here to do some book reviews. I have two that I'm going to be doing in a joint review today. They're not very similar at all, but I gave them the same rating, so that's why I've put them in this video together. Let's get started. The first one I'm going to talk to you guys about is called The Great God Pan. This is by Arthur Machen, and this one was a book that was selected for Sassy Reads, which is a hashtag on Twitter run by Chelsea from The Reading Outlaw and Elizabeth from Books and Pieces, whose channels I will link. And they together run the Sassy Reads, where they choose a book, a fairly old book most of the time, and they basically analyse it as they go through, looking for all sorts of crazy ideas that haven't necessarily transferred that well into modern day English. And I really enjoy the kind of sass behind this idea, where you kind of take a book and you just let loose all of your emotions about it as you read it. So that is why I picked this one up. This, I would say, is a pretty gothic story. It's not something I would typically read because I don't read an awful lot of gothic books. I would class this as a novella as well. It's really short. I think it's around only like 90 to 100 pages. It's pretty short. And this story follows a young girl who is never really shown in the story that much, but she is talked about a lot in the story by the men who are in this story. There is a lot of innuendo in this book. There's a lot of sexual tension, a lot of innuendo, a lot of kind of quirky moments that the author has decided to put in, because at the time he was being quite saucy. At the time he was being a little bit naughty, a little bit on edge, kind of breaking some stereotypes and stuff. Nowadays, it seems very tame. It seems very, very tame, which is kind of why it works for the Sassy Reads hashtag. It's kind of a book that hasn't aged as well as it might have done. This book definitely has the ideas of a terrible devil woman in it. It certainly thinks of females in a bad light a lot of the time, but you kind of have to smile about it because you know that the author is intentionally doing it. Even though I didn't love the book for the book, I loved the actual surrounding chats that I had with people about it. The Twitter was fantastic, and all of that gave me much more of an inclusive idea of the book and just generally made it more fun. It's a story about a young girl who has a weird sexual awakening, supposedly, and possibly is a lesbian. We don't know. The men in this story are very scared of her. They don't like her. They're pretty intimidated by what she does because she's got to be a devil if she has sexy time. So it's kind of a crazy gothic story, and I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about it than that, other than it's funny, it's crazy, you kind of have to take everything in this with a pinch of salt. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars because it was just very weird. The next one I have to talk to you guys about, I actually gave a slightly lower rating than this, so I didn't quite give them the same. And this one is called Underground, and it's by S.L. Gray, which is actually a pseudonym for two authors, Sarah Lotz and Louis Greenberg. I was more interested in Sarah's side of things because I had heard of Sarah Lotz. I think she writes a horror series, whereas I hadn't heard of Louis Greenberg. So I went into this intrigued, but not necessarily expecting it to be quite my thing. I was actually sent this for free from Macmillan. I didn't request this one, it just turned up at my house. It was one of those weird books that just turns up and you're like, what is this? So it wasn't really my cup of tea, to be honest. I liked the ideas in this. It reminded me a lot of Wool by Hugh Howey, which is a series I've really enjoyed. It's about a world where things are going badly. There is this crazy sounding virus in this world that is killing a lot of people, and it's coming over to the US, which is where this is set. So there are a few families who have already kind of been on this doomsday lookout, and they have invested in this underground condo apartment type place where they will be safe from crazy outbreaks of disease or like the end of the world situation. We focus on a couple of different families who, at the time of this disease starting to spread, decide that they are going to go to their bunker. They are going to go and hide underground for the extent of this disaster, whatever it may be. However, when they get there and they lock themselves in and everyone is there, things start to go quite horribly wrong quite quickly, and a lot of people end up dead by the end of this story. No one quite knows who it is doing the killings. No one quite knows why the killings are happening, but people are starting to die, and it does not look good for the people who are left in there on their own. There's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of tension, there are some racist comments made, which I didn't really find that good, really. I found them quite nasty, quite crude. I think it's all intentional on the author's part, but I didn't find it a pleasant reading experience, really. It wasn't a book I would necessarily have chosen for myself. As a whole, I think it was tense the whole way through. I do think they got the tension side of it right, and it was tense the whole way through. I was constantly thinking, when are we going to find out who this murderer is? What is going to happen next? Because it was full of twists and turns that I didn't necessarily see coming. However, when the final reveal happened, I felt like it was really anticlimactic and didn't make sense, and I didn't like that about it. I wish it had made more sense. There were not enough clues, I didn't think. There were not enough moments that really worked to make the character it turned out to be the one who was the murderer. So it's kind of a mystery, kind of a horror, kind of a dystopian, all wrapped into one. It's interesting. I did read it in one sitting, and I stayed up until like 1 a.m. to find out who was going to be the murderer, and I was liking it a lot for like the first half. The second half was a real letdown for me, and I just found that it was just going more and more downhill. And when the murderer was revealed, I just didn't care. I was like, what? Why? Didn't make sense, didn't really connect with it, and unfortunately it wasn't my favourite read. So I couldn't give this more than a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay in the end. There were some good moments, but it just didn't pay off as it should have done, I think. So that was the biggest complaint I had with this. I would love to hear which of these two books sounds more interesting to you. They're both okay reads or likeable reads, but kind of a bit disappointing as well for the second one. So I'd love to hear if either of these appealed to you, or if you had a different experience and you enjoyed these more. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me.